Okay, very good. All right. So we're starting the recording.
Well, good evening. It's good that you all could come to this evening. Um, I think what we'll do, we'll start out with the four immeasurables. As Lama Adam told, by the way, can you hear me? That's sometimes a problem. Let me, there we go. Uh, so let's start out with the immeasurables. As Lama Adam told us a couple of days ago, these immeasurables can either be a prayer or a practice. And we'll sort of, what he means by that is it could be a prayer we just recite. It could be a practice where we take each one of these thoughts and sort of contemplate them individually over time. And I'd have to tell you that when I first began some 20 years ago, one of the first practices that Lama Kathy gave me was the four immeasurables. And she gave them to me not as a prayer, but as a practice that I would say each one of these and then think about them and contemplate them. But tonight we'll just sort of use them as a prayer. And the first immeasurable is one of love. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. The second one is one of compassion. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. The third is called empathetic or sympathetic joy. May all beings never be separated from supreme joy. And the fourth is, may all beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So let's just take a moment or two and sort of run those ideas over in our mind as a prayer and sort of almost like a practice. So last time we got together, we sort of reviewed how we were doing. So let's start out. How's everybody doing? Okay, thumbs up. Okay. I know, Catherine, the last time we talked, no, it was when Lama Kathy was talking. You said that you felt like the meditations you were doing has sort of bled over into your life, and that you become it's sort of like cool work for you to do, to think of these meditations as something going on even after your formal sessions. And Ellen, I remember from a couple of days ago, you said that this is good fun. And I like that thought that it can be fun. You can enjoy it. I think your quote was, it brings the fun back. And I think there's truth to that. Tom, I think you said that you become a little bit more dedicated as a result of the practice. And I think that's because we have the support of one another. One of the things I'm noticing is I feel just being present with you folks, there's a certain harmony as a result of our joint effort and our joint aspirations, that that because of that, there's a harmony here, a peacefulness about our gathering together. So I think those are all very good observations. Does anyone have any other kinds of thoughts that come into your mind right now? You can unmute yourself if there's any thoughts you have. If not, we can go on.
Lama Tom?
Yeah.
Just kind of want to reiterate something that you had stated about, when you mentioned mine was around dedication. We're all at home, right? For the most part.
Yeah.
Many of us are distance learners, but what has been great is that ability to come together as a group, as a Sangha, as a community, no matter where we're at, and use that time to practice together. In a way, it's kind of like being back at the center, whether that center was KTD, KTC, wherever we're from, but being together. It is a motivational driver to reconnect and constantly be like a support for, I see it as a support for you. I see it as a support for everyone else to show up, be present, and work on myself for the benefit of others.
Ah, very good. Thank you, Tom. One other thought that I have about all of this is I've been really impressed with the talks given by Lama Adam, Lama Kathy, and Lama last night. Lama Kathy, of course, she's done this for 20 years, and there's a beauty about her knowing. So things just very easily come to her when she's talking, and that's beautiful to see that. I think Lama Adam, having just recently gotten out of retreat, he's got this enthusiasm. It's really fun to watch. And Lama last night, I think what I liked about Lama is in terms of her conversation, she's so easy things flow so easily with her. And she's very down to earth and very direct. And I think these are all good qualities. So let's go on here and let's talk a little bit more about meditation. Lama Kathy, a couple of days ago, and you'll probably recall this, she said at first, most of what we do when we're beginning to learn to meditate, it's all about technique, learning what to do, how to do it, and being proper in that. And I think that's true. And that's a step that can't be missed. If you miss that step, you're going to wind up being sloppy. And you don't want that. You want to have a proper stance, a proper motivation, a proper posture, and all that sort of thing. But as you get comfortable with that, and that may take quite a bit of time, but once you get comfortable with that, what meditation becomes is you start becoming more self-aware. And you're becoming more aware of both your positive and your negative states. When you sit down, you almost immediately start recognizing what kind of thoughts maybe you had during the day, whether they were really positive or really negative, because that's what starts coming up. And so you become aware of that. Not that you grasp onto that, but that you recognize it and touch it and let it go. But you become aware. And that's a really important thing, because how can we really transform our lives unless we're aware of where we are right now? And so when we sit down, we're frequently very quickly aware of what our state of mind is. So it's really, meditation is an opportunity to see what's going on in our mind on any given day. Lama Kathy said it's sometimes like opening a Pandora's box. I like there's a lot of truth to that too. I mean, you start recognizing all these things. Trangu Rinpoche one time said that if you observed your thoughts in any given day, you would notice that a great deal of them are negative. And that through meditation, we're dropping thoughts, and as a result, maybe having fewer thoughts. And that's not such a bad thing when you consider that many of our thoughts in any given day are fairly negative. She also said something that I thought was very profound. She said that we can exist between our thoughts. That's a pretty big deal. To think that we aren't just our thoughts, that we transcend our thoughts. That's a big deal. That we exist in the gaps between our thoughts. Wow. What we start to do is we become aware of some of our habitual ways of thinking and our habits. And because of self-awareness, we're able to change some of that. Slowly, 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 but we do. There are two particular attitudes, you might say, that can be very important to this change or transformation. The first attitude is one of letting go. If we notice, most of our thoughts are either thoughts of the future or the past. In the future, we have anxieties, and the past are about our regrets. And so being able to let go of that can be very freeing. The second attitude that we can develop is one of contentment. If you'll notice in meditation, one of the biggest barriers or obstacles is our restlessness. It's this thought that the next thought is better than the present thought, a restlessness about wanting to get to that next thought, to that next thing. And so we learn to just rest contentedly in the present. And there's a freedom in that being present in the here and now. A couple of years ago, I worked with Eric Weinberg in the prisons down in Chillicothe. And some of the guys wanted to know about what we did in retreat. And I started talking to them about that. And so they said, well, what time do you get up? And I said, well, sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning. They said, wow, we get up at 6 or 7. And they said, what do you have for breakfast? And I said, well, oatmeal. And I said, we have pancakes, we have, bacon, eggs, all that sort of thing. And I said, well, yeah, okay. He said, and so what do you do all day? And I said, well, we meditate. Well, they said, do you ever watch TV? And I said, no, we never particularly watch TV. He said, well, we get to watch TV anytime we want to. And so it went on like this. And one of the fellows said, well, you should have come here instead of going into retreat. But I wanted to stay in retreat, and these guys wanted to get out. So it's about what's the point here? The point is, it's all about contentment and choosing to be where you're at. I chose all those kind of things. And they didn't choose to be where they are at. And so it's a question of choosing and being content. I was content with the austerities of retreat, and they were not happy with their situation, although in some ways better than mine, simply because they didn't choose that and they weren't content. So one of the things, going back to my point, the point is in meditation, we learn a contentment of being in the present here and now. Oftentimes, if we're really having difficulty in our meditation, one of the things we can look to is, am I being content in the present? Am I wanting that next moment, to be in that next moment? And then being able to come back and relax and being present in the moment. So let's do a little meditation right now. Would you all be okay if we did 10 minutes? Okay, we'll do 10 minutes. And if you have a problem with that, that's really not a problem. All you have to do is just sort of fall out of it and come back when you can. So let's go over the instructions as we do. We start with our legs. One's crossed over the other if you can, or one in front of the other, whichever. And if you're sitting in a seat, just make, in your chair, make sure your feet are flat on the ground and about between your shoulders, in terms of where they're placed on the floor, like that. Your back's nice and straight. Your shoulders are sort of back and down. Your hands are folded over your thumb and placed on your knees, or you can just place them flat on your knees, whatever's most comfortable for you. Your chin nicely tucked in. Your tongue against your palate, and your eyes in a soft gaze off of your nose, about arm's length in terms of where you put your gaze. It's a soft gaze, meaning you're not looking at anything in particular. And the technique is basically following the breath. Tom last couple of days ago talked about sort of open awareness, and that's basically meditating without a support. In our case, we're going to use our breath as a support to our awareness. And we just notice our breath coming in and out. And the mental technique is that when our mind wanders, as it will, that we gently bring it back to our attention on our breath. And so we'll do this for about 10 minutes. Okay. I wanted to, I, I muted so you didn't hear the bell. Sorry about that. One piece of advice I was given one time that I thought was very helpful that might be of help to you. So if there's a lot of thoughts going on in your mind and it's racing this way, try to relax a little bit. So lots of thoughts, relax. If you're starting to feel sort of sleepy and down, tighten up a bit, literally tighten up your body. So that can be very helpful advice, particularly when lots of thoughts are coming through your mind. I think I would have saved myself a lot of trouble had I had that advice from the very beginning of my practice. So it's a question of being self-aware, knowing when thoughts are going through your mind. Anybody have any questions or thoughts about meditation? Okay, there's a few more people who have joined us. So tonight we're going to talk about the four immeasurables. They're also called the Brahma Viharas, the divine abode of Brahma. It was thought that thinking these thoughts and putting them into practice, one can abide in divine places, you could put it that way. There is some evidence that these four immeasurable thoughts were actually predate the Buddha, that they are found in literature that predates the Buddha. Of course, the Buddha put them in a context that we understand differently than perhaps they did before him. But they're basically, and we've heard about them already from Lama Kathy, Lama, and Lama Adam. They are loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy or sympathetic joy. They're called one or the other, sympathetic joy or empathetic joy, and equanimity. And it is, as we said from the very beginning, it's both a practice. We can actually spend a whole session, meditation session, contemplating those four thoughts. And I have done that many times before, and it's been very helpful. I think when you contemplate these thoughts, it puts you in more harmony with everyone else. I think to think loving, kind thoughts of other people, being compassionate, wanting their happiness, and so forth, that puts you in harmony with other folks. So the idea here is to put these into practice off the cushion, to sort of suffuse your universe with these thoughts of kindness, love, and compassion, and equanimity. And the practice is basically we would start with ourself, wishing ourself happiness. Then we would go on to maybe people that we're very familiar with. It's very much like Tonglen. Then we might go to difficult people, then to all people. So we would just go in that order with each one of those four thoughts. And it can be a beautiful session that you do. And I would suggest trying that sometime. Lama Kathy, the last time she spoke, said to recite the first two. And I'm just suggesting you might add on to that and make it a practice at some time, not simply a prayer. Okay. I made notes throughout the day. I'm looking at my sticky notes. that I did throughout the day. So pardon me for taking a little time to look at and I don't write very well right now, so I have to look really close to see what I said. The whole idea here is to extend these thoughts of loving kindness and so forth to all beings. That's what makes it immeasurable. We're extending it to everyone. And it's also immeasurable in that the attitude we're developing provides immeasurable merit for doing it. And again, as I said before, it can result in a feeling of harmony with the rest of the world. So now let's talk about a particular immeasurable, empathetic joy. The joy we get out of observing and participating in the joy of other people. I'm going to talk about the opposite right now. How we often think when other people experience something fortunate in their lives. And I'm only going to speak for myself. You may be entirely different, and that's okay. But here's how I often see things, and I'm working on this. I see sometimes life as a zero-sum game. And that means that if you get something, somehow I'm diminished. And if I get something, somehow you're diminished. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say zero-sum game? We play that. And it's certainly prevalent in our society and our culture at the moment. So let me give you an example. Say I'm struggling along, doing the best I can, paying my bills from month to month, but having nothing much left over. And my neighbor all of a sudden strikes the lottery. And so he calls, he says, come on over, we're going to have a party. What might go through my mind? I might begrudgingly celebrate. In fact, I might not be celebrating at all in my own mind. I might be thinking, gee, he got something I don't have. He didn't deserve that. I'm much more deserving. And we take that example, but there are many, many other examples in our lives where we see somebody else somehow fortunate in some circumstance, and we only begrudgingly want to celebrate. Even though their good fortune took nothing away from my fortune or my circumstances, it didn't maybe add to it in that sense of wealth or so forth. But it took nothing away from me, but I still begrudgingly celebrate their good fortune. You ever have that happen to you? I know it, it happens in all kinds of circumstances. We just have difficulty that way. And it's really an ugly attitude to generate. It looks really ugly. And if we think about it, how disfiguring such an attitude is. And this is even with someone we love a great deal. A good friend might have good fortune, and we still may have this begrudging attitude. There's just something sometimes in us that cannot celebrate fully because we are so bound up in who we are and who we think we are. We are so self-referent. It's all about us, you know? This self-reference can display itself in all kinds of ways. Someone talks about their being ill, and instead of being compassionate, we want to talk to them about our last illness. Someone says, gosh, I've got a bad cold. Well, you wouldn't believe the cold I had 3 weeks ago. Or when they had something really joyful to talk about. I had a wonderful vacation last week. We went to the Caribbean. Well, let me tell you about the time I was in Paris. You wouldn't believe what a time. And it's all self-referent. We do that so often. And so in this particular circumstance where someone has good fortune, we're referring to ourselves. We're looking at ourselves. That's not, I didn't get that. It's not mine. It's this self-clinging thing. And what happens sometimes too is not only in this circumstance do we begrudge them, we start thinking ugly thoughts about what they're thinking. In other words, like, okay, so they got all this money. Now they're thinking about how poor I am. They won't want to be, you know, or say someone got an advanced degree. Now they're going to think how stupid I am. You know, we don't even know what they're thinking. But because of our self-referential way of thinking, we start thinking we know what they're thinking. It can get pretty crazy. But we can develop joy about other people's good fortune. We can do that. We don't even have to have a history with them. It could be anybody. We could be watching TV and we see someone who got something beautiful, did something beautiful, and we rejoice in that. So often we can look at someone doing something virtuous and say, yeah, but I wonder what their real attitude is, you know? We can get that way. We can do those kind of things. But we can also celebrate or cultivate, I should say, an attitude for all beings that whatever their dreams are, they'll be realized. We can develop that kind of attitude. This thing of empathetic joy is really a trait that we want to cultivate, develop, and we can do this through the four immeasurables. It may, when we see someone else who got something really good or did something really good, we can say, I rejoice in that. Now you're going to tell me initially that may, or something like that. It doesn't have to be those exact words, but something like that. And you may say to me, well, that's a pretty artificial way of thinking. It may be initially, but it's saying it and repeating it and developing a heartfelt sense of that. So it's cultivating. Where it doesn't exist, we develop it. And it's possible. And this attitude of empathetic joy becomes our default attitude. It's what we go to first. There may be in the back of our mind thoughts of envy or jealousy, but what we put up front is our joy at their good fortune. And that becomes our default attitude. And this other attitude that we have in the back, because we don't pay attention to it, it just withers away. It no longer is present. So that habitually, when we see someone who has something good or does something good, we actually rejoice. I mean, we really can do that. That's a possibility. Rather than this horror show, and it is a horror show of jealousy, envy that we manifest, we have this joy in what they have accomplished, done, or gotten. And it's so much more pleasant. Again, I don't want to mislead you. Initially, it may be a little artificial because we have established this habit of begrudging other people good fortune. So when we do these 4 immeasurables on the cushion, it's sort of like a laboratory, as Lama Kathy said, or you might say our cushion and our meditation is sort of like a hothouse where we develop these out of seeds, these plants of kindness and compassion and so forth. And then as they develop, we can set them out and plant them in the world. So it's sort of like a greenhouse. Our meditation can be sort of like a greenhouse where we develop in private what we display in public and mean it. And in that case, what we do on the cushion is consistent with what we do off the cushion. Right now, much of what we think of and meditate on and believe even is reserved for the cushion, but we can, through mindfulness and awareness that we're developing in meditation, take it off the cushion. And where does this mindfulness and awareness come into play? Well, very simply, someone gets something really good or does something really good, and immediately this begrudging attitude comes into our mind. This is my prompting to practice. I'm aware that this is in the background, that this begrudging attitude is there. And I'm aware of it because in meditation, I developed this awareness, this sensitivity to my thoughts. And then I'm mindful, which means I adopt an appropriate response to that begrudging attitude, which is one of joy. So mindfulness and awareness developed on the cushion are useful, in fact, necessary tools to use off the cushion so that there is a consistency between the two. Right now, there may be a certain amount of separation between the two. But what we're hoping is eventually that the two blend together as one. And we can do that. We can have confidence that we can do that. And through going back and doing it over and over again, despite our failures, being resilient in that respect, we can do it. When we have this kind of attitude of rejoicing, loving kindness, compassion, equanimity, when we have that kind of attitude towards others, our relationships with others become so much more simple, so much more direct, so much more satisfying. And again, I don't want to mislead you. I'm not saying it's easy to develop this, but it's easier as you go along. It becomes easier as you go along. You know, initially, meditation may be difficult for you, but you can develop that attitude. And some of you have already spoken about that. I read someplace, and I don't know the science behind it so much, but I like to read stuff about social science. And one of the things that I read recently was that if you do anything daily for 21 days, you develop a habit. That seems reasonable to me. So, for example, if for 21 days you did this meditation, not just the 10 days, but go on for 11 more days, you're likely to develop a habit. And so the same kind of thing applies to each one of these immeasurables. If for 21 days I rejoice in other people's happiness, I can develop a habit of that. I don't know if it's 21 days, but you get the point that through habituating our mind to this different way of approaching, we can develop that happier attitude. And again, the idea when you're doing this practice was start with, this particular one, start with a friend. And the others, you start with yourself. But here, you start with a friend and then transition to a neutral person, then to someone you find difficult. I mean, it's easier probably to rejoice in your family's good fortune. It's very difficult at times to rejoice in someone you find difficult. So this is what you're stretching that attitude to include others and then everyone. And you can say it in different ways. When I come across this begrudging attitude, I just say, "Oh, I rejoice." You may say different, "I'm happy for you," or the words are less important than the attitude. When you're saying these four immeasurables, you may ask me, do I have to be, is there any emotion involved in it? And yeah, there is. In fact, I think it's necessary to have some emotion about it, love, compassion, empathetic joy requires a certain amount of emotion, not, overwhelming, but it should be there. And I tell you that because one time someone asked Rinpoche that question, is there emotion involved to my compassion, in my love? And without any reservation, Rinpoche said yes. In a morning prayer I say every day, it says, the one thing to be passionate about is compassion. So when you're saying these immeasurables, let them touch your heart. I mean, you really want to love, just like a mother would want to love her newborn. You would love even the stranger. And, at some point, even the people you find difficult, you would love them as a mother would love her newborn. It's like that. So emotion is involved in this. So it's really about changing our frame of reference from one of self-reference to concern for everybody. It's a process, it takes time and it's effort, but over time you can develop this habit of rejoicing in other people's good fortune. So I think that's about all I want to say right now. So anyone wants to unmute yourself and say whatever might be on your mind, I'd be more than happy to entertain whatever thoughts you might have right now.
I enjoyed this talk because it on and off the cushion, I aspired to not have the emotion just come up. It just comes up and I'm like, oh, I would like to have it not be so grab me so much. I would like to have a little bit more joy and empathy, but I'm still working on that. So this was helpful. Yeah.
Pema Chodron talks about shimpa, where you get grabbed by something that's self-clinging of some sort or another. And in the instances we were speaking of tonight, there's sort of like you get grabbed by it. Someone's going to pour you, oof, you feel that for just a second. Yeah. So you do know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Anybody else? If not, we can, we have about 3 or 4 minutes. We can sort of, and I won't give instructions, we'll just do it. Why don't we take just a few minutes to return to meditation. So I want to thank you all for being here tonight. We have one more night of this 10-night series. Tomorrow night, Lama Kathy and Lama Adam will be joining us. I hope you can come back tomorrow night. What I hope for you is that through the prayer and practice of the 4 immeasurables, you find harmony with fellow beings, that what you contemplate on the cushion, you practice through mindfulness and awareness off the cushion. And so let's dedicate the merit of our being together here tonight in harmony by reciting the prayer of dedication. By this merit, may all attain awakening. May merit defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from this ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. May we all free all beings. May we free all beings. Thank you, and I hope to see you tomorrow night, and take care. Bye-bye now.
Okay, thanks, everyone.